This is Andi Purewal for ID Boxing. We're here in Sheffield and I'm joined by Adam Morallee. Adam, firstly, how is life?
Yes, okay, thanks. Been a bit hectic last 24 hours, but all good.
I was going to say, you had one big bit of heavyweight action to deal with down in London, and now you've got more heavyweight action to deal with up here in Sheffield. We'll start off with a man up here, the Romford Bull. Johnny Fisher returns on Saturday night. What are you hoping to see from him in this outing, Adam?
I think with Johnny, he had effectively a limited amateur career, so we've been trying to get him some of that learning through his professional fights. And when he fought Nguema last time, that was a relatively significant step up for him. Good win, but Johnny wasn't happy because Johnny's all about constant improvement. I think what we're looking for this time is, Johnny's hand was injured out last time. Looking to see whether Johnny can, well, first of all, how does he respond to that injury? How does he respond to coming back from that injury? He didn't punch for, I think, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. So, number one, looking to how he responds to the injury. And number two, looking to see what he's picked up from Mark and whether he can put that into practice.
Adam, we know Johnny's a very popular man and he sells a lot of tickets. In the build-up to his last fight, do you feel like it was, well, and rather after it, do you feel like it was for his benefit that he had kind of a difficult fight to come through because it maybe helped his fans to realise he's got a long way to go in this sport and it's not just these expectations of he's just going to take over?
Yeah, I think when you've got promoters and you see someone like Edgar Berlanga with Top Rank, I think he had 17 KOs, 16 first round KOs or something like that. You can create a hype train and that's amazing, that's brilliant. But at some point, if someone isn't at the required level, and I'm not saying he isn't, but if they're not at the required level, they fall off that train. And I think with Johnny, yeah, there are a lot of people who don't normally watch boxing who watch Johnny Fisher, and so they may have preconceived ideas about it and think he's going to knock everybody out. So it's good for those fans to see what Johnny has to come. Johnny came through a cut. He came through, a very, very decent level opponent that even someone off, Team GB coming in fourth, fifth fight would be a good opponent for them. And we're just looking to build Johnny slowly. But I do think Johnny's fan base saw that and thought, yeah, it's something different. He didn't get the knockout. What's going to happen next time? So tomorrow night, listen, I'm sure Johnny's fans and Johnny want a quick knockout, an easy knockout, all that. But I've seen this guy. He's no mug either. And what I really, really want from Johnny tomorrow night, it's not about the knockout. It's about showing an improvement in his skill level.
On the back of the last fight, Eddie said that he'd like to take Johnny through that traditional route, starting with a Southern Area title upwards. Do you agree with that? Would you like to see him go down that kind of path throughout his career now?
Absolutely. That is the right path for Johnny Fisher. Area title, so Southern Area title, British, European, World, that Commonwealth. That's what he should be doing, and I'm excited for him actually because I think he's ready for that Southern Area challenge sooner rather than later. I think he has great natural talent. The thing about Johnny is people will say, oh, he's not so skilled. Haters will say he's not so skilled, he just sells a load of tickets. That's why Matchroom have him. Johnny is skilled. Johnny just needs to do the right learning to move him through.
Adam, as a manager of someone in Johnny's position who doesn't have that extensive amateur pedigree as you mentioned, how exciting do you find the challenge of trying to guide his career and seeing how far exactly he can go in the sport?
I think it's really exciting. I think you have different challenges as a manager. When you have someone that comes straight off Team GB, like Joyce, that's one thing. You have someone that's come from a completely different area, been boxing from a very young age and maybe selling tickets to make money, and then they come up with a promotional deal. That's a different challenge. And with Johnny, we met Johnny in Vegas when he was sparring Joe, and Johnny wanted to do work experience at my law firm. That's how we first met Johnny, but he's a terrific guy with a terrific family, but that shouldn't be held against him. On his own, with no fans, with none of that, Johnny Fisher is a tremendous prospect.
Provided he comes through tomorrow night unscathed, Adam, how active would you like to see him be for the remainder of this year then?
Johnny wants to be really, really active, and sometimes we have to hold him back. His injury was a result of kind of not constant activity, but he needed to just step back a bit. He's a young guy. So what are we, August, at least another 2 times out in the year, one in London. And if you remember, we were talking about Vegas early in the year and everyone got very excited about that. I'd say maybe twice more in London and then he'll go on tour again next year.
But again, going back to his last fight, when you mentioned Vegas, how much or how far back would you say that a potential outing him somewhere like a Vegas could be? Because I can imagine again he'd have a lot of travelling support.
Yeah, he would. I think there's 2 sides to Johnny. There's the promotional side, and then there's the out-and-out boxing side. And I think on the promotional side, getting Johnny Fisher to Las Vegas is great. Think of all the content. Think of everybody going over there. The Romford Bellamy who go over there. Phenomenal. Is it the right fight for Johnny, though, in his career? And we've got to balance those two things carefully. I mean, I was speaking to someone in the bar last night who is an incredible fighter, but not many people know them. And it's like you've got to get the right balance. Johnny is getting very, very well known, but we must concentrate on the product. There's nothing more important than the product.
How key for Johnny has the experience of sharing the ring with the like of Joe Joyce and Tyson Fury, Derek Chisora in sparring to better his own abilities?
I think what it gives Johnny is confidence, because Johnny hasn't had that amateur pedigree where he's been on Team GB and he's beaten the best in the world. Johnny now knows, he's been in with Guido Vianello as well, he knows he can mix it at the top level. I've watched him spar Joe countless times, and Johnny does really, really well in the early rounds against Joe. And you look at Johnny and you think, Jesus, which one of these two is pushing for the world title? But, you know, what it's really, really about for Johnny is constantly improving. But sparring those guys gives him confidence. He knows at the very top level he can do it. But he also, the best thing about Johnny, out of everything, it's not his personality, his profile, his dad, the Romford Bellamy. The best thing is his insatiable hunger to keep learning.
Moving away from Johnny, but sticking with your heavyweights, Joe Joyce. Now, the Joyce-Parker fight seemed to be, I think for most people, kind of dead and buried when Joe Parker went and signed with Sky. And then yesterday we had the announcement the fight is back on in September. Adam, talk me through this entire scenario and how you've managed to end back 360 with the fight being announced.
Yeah, I think we started talking. So Parker fought Chisora December. I saw David Higgins there. We chatted, and he said, "Listen, I'm in exclusive negotiating Purewal Matchroom. I'll come back to you when that finishes." That finished, I think, late January. We started talking between me and him. Then it went to the Warrens. They wanted the fight. I think he was number 2 then, 1v2. Then the Warrens had their own negotiation with Joseph Parker. I phoned up Joe. I said, "We're 90% there. We're 95% there. It's going to get done." And then at that moment, it started. Every time we thought something was agreed, they wanted more and more and more. "Joe, it's done." "Oh, sorry, they want one thing more." "It's done." Then about to be signed. Andy Lee's wife's having a baby. "Okay, let's push it. Where to?" "September." "Book the arena September 24th. Say, can Joe have an interim fight?" "Yeah." "Okay, agreed. What if Joe gets injured?" "Okay, deal with that eventuality." Then we are all set for the interim fight. And then what happens? He signs with Sky. I remember it really well. We felt like he'd basically done it behind, but it's business, right? David Higgins has got to do the right thing by Joseph Parker. We understood that. Then they come and make us an offer. Obviously, you know Ben Shalom pretty well because he promotes a few other fighters. Then they make us an offer. Then you've got two people who are really in a kind of confrontational situation because, you know, BT thought the Warrens thought they had Joe, and now Boxer and Sky have got Joe Parker. So I thought it was dead and buried at that point. We had the hammer fight. We were looking at top 15 opponents, lots of different names, went through it. And then George Warren said to me, "Adam, send me through your top 5 now." And number 1 was Joe Parker. And something happened and the two of them got together. I think ultimately Joseph Parker and his team realised that was the fight for them and they really had nowhere else to go. And they were willing to box on BT. And so credit to Ben Shalom, credit to George Warren.
How easy was the fight to make a second time around? Were there many obstacles to try to overcome?
Yeah, completely. Same as the first time, horrendous. Every time you thought it was done, another question got asked. And it is like, there's a tier in negotiating boxing contracts of things where you go, money first, okay, money's done. And then you have things like rematch clauses, other clauses. Then you have things like, I mean, there wasn't much of who walks first and gloves and judges. There wasn't much of that. But then tickets and flights and on and on and on. And then just when we thought it was finished, as I said yesterday at the press conference, like Columbo, but many people didn't get that reference. He was a detective that used to always just say, one more thing, and it kept going. Joe Joyce was actually pissed off. I mean, he doesn't get pissed off that much, but he was actually pissed off, and I ended up not telling him it was almost done anymore. I probably told him that 15 times. And Wednesday, press conference was Thursday, I was still in Croatia Wednesday, still wasn't done at midnight.
How much of a surprise to you was it, Adam, that there was maybe more of a willingness to sit back down and discuss it on the back of a fight previously falling through, knowing that Parker had signed with Sky? Because everybody would have assumed that Sky would have just guided him down his own career path, and maybe further down the line him and Joe Joyce could have met. So how much of a surprise was it to you to have seen that revisited?
It's a big surprise because I think it's difficult for promoters to work with each other to start with, because which network does it go on? But secondly, not only are these promoters working together, I think pretty much for the first time outside of purse bids, but they're working together in a scenario where it's not like Boxer have had Joyce-Parker for years, in the same way that the Warrens have had Joe Joyce. They only just got Joyce-Parker, so to be made in those circumstances was pretty incredible, actually.
What was it like seeing both Frank and Ben Shalom on a table yesterday?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I've been dealing with other things with Ben Shalom recently, and it was good to see him. I think you're really dealing with someone effectively entering the promotional game and someone who's at the top of his game and has been there for years in Frank Warren. It was quite interesting when they had their little exchange yesterday when Frank told him that, there's none of his business. It's good. I think boxing fans want more of it. They want more of promoters on the table. They want Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn on the same table. They want Ben Shalom and Eddie Hearn on the same table. That's what they want.
I think us as content creators would love to see that as well, Adam. Just on the fight itself, is this finally the one which, if Joe was to be successful, your Joe, that is, it gains him a recognition as a world level heavyweight and something that he's deserving of, a world title opportunity?
Yeah, look, I think there's various ways you look at this. The world title opportunity, Joe's number one now. The mandatory should be called March next year. He can sit here, do nothing, sit back in England, and he should get called as the mandatory. So it doesn't. What do we gain from the Parker fight? The opportunity to be the mandatory? No, not really. Will it get the interim WBO status? I hope so, and that gives him a better purse split when we then come to negotiate the world title fight. It also, if he gets the interim title, if it vacates, Joe becomes the world champion. So you get something there. But really, what this fight is about for Joe is breaking into the consciousness of more casual boxing fans. And I think you look at BT, great platform. They've got Champions League, they've got Premier League. There's no other BT pay-per-view fight coming up in the second half of the year that I know yet. It's going to be pumped through on Premier League. It's going to be pumped through on Champions League. They're going to be talking about Joyce-Parker, Joyce-Parker, Joyce-Parker. And he'll start to get more into people's consciousness. We'll get it on billboards. And that, for me, is the big plus of this fight. It's a big fight, and members of the public, Joe will start to crack into that recognition. Regular members of the public, who do they know as boxers? AJ, Fury. I'm not saying Joe's at that level. But if he has any aspirations to get to that level, he needs fights like this.
You mentioned the WBO mandatory situation. Have you spoken to Paco about kind of if they're going to be planning on calling that immediately after Usyk AJ2?
Yeah, I mean, as a team, our negotiations with the WBO are led by the promoter, the Warrens. And yeah, I think they're speaking to him now. So hopefully we'll get news on that soon. I'm really hopeful.
With the fight itself, what are you actually expecting to see when the pair of them do get into the ring and are finally there?
I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be very close. I think a lot of the reaction online is that kind of 50-50 kind of pick and fight. I think from our perspective, it's a brilliant entry for Joe to we'll call it the elite world level. Joyce-Parker, former world champion, never been stopped, only lost to AJ and White. Really top level operator. What I think is going to happen, I think early on it'll be difficult for Joe. I think Parker's elusive, fast hands. I think Joe Joyce has an elite engine, and I think as he goes through his career, what people will realise is how good he is rounds 9, 10, 11, 12. He's not really shown that. The only fight that went the distance was Bryant Jennings, and it wasn't Joe's greatest night, it wasn't a bad night, but Jennings also has an incredible engine. He's almost like, he's a bridgerweight, isn't he? But it's almost like a cruiserweight. But Joe Joyce against the big boys, rounds 9, 10, 11, 12, I don't think Parker will be able to stand up to Joe Joyce's pace. I saw Parker against Chisora, he had breathers. Joe Joyce doesn't let you have a breather, throws probably twice as many punches. For all the knocks Joe gets about being slow and rubbish, no one has his punch output. He puts that on you for 6 rounds. Okay, after 6 rounds it might be very close. Joe could even be behind 7, 8, 9. I think Joe will stop him late.
Adam, just on the pay-per-view front, over social media, you had a mixed reaction. Some people understood it, some people kind of didn't agree with it. What's your take on it, and how would you anticipate it kind of doing when it is available to purchase?
I think it's Joe's first pay-per-view. He was going to do Dubois pay-per-view pre-COVID. I think that boxing fans are always going to not be happy with someone's first pay-per-view, but you've got to have your first one, haven't you, before you become an established fighter. I think this is definitely pay-per-view worthy. I think it has had a mixed reaction, but you're always going to get that. But if you look at heavyweight fights happen in the UK in the second half of the year. It's the biggest one. So of course we've got AJ Usyk, but those guys are already established stars. This is Joe's breakthrough. What numbers does it do? I'm not sure. It depends. I think BT and Sky will collaborate and promote it hard, and that is what's important. It will be, as I said, Champions League, Premier League. I'm hopeful it will do something starting with, over 250. Over 250 would be good.
Moving away from that one and get your thoughts on another one of your fighters, Lerrone Richards. Now, a couple of interviews were done by Lerrone yesterday where he's mentioned he's no longer with Matchroom Boxing. I just want to get your understanding of, well, not your understanding, but your thoughts on that entire scenario and what led Lerrone to deciding to part ways.
Look, Lerrone is a very, very high-level elite fighter within SJAM. No disrespect to anyone else within SJAM. He's probably our best pure boxer. I think he's been with the Warrants, he's been with Matchroom. I don't think we've got any complaints with Matchroom. Credit to Frank Smith and Eddie on what they did with Lerrone. European title with Giovanni De Carolis. Beat Gongora for the IBO world title. I think the best way to put it is we weren't on the same page with regards to next steps for Lerrone. I think Matchroom are a tremendous promoter and can get you the big fights. But we just weren't completely aligned on Lerrone's path, and we sat down, had a very civil conversation with him and thought it was best to part ways.
What fights were you guys asking Matchroom to try to deliver for you? Because we know the one which was turned down was the Ali Akhmedov fight. So away from him, what were you guys saying to Matchroom as a counter?
I don't think we're, between myself and Lerrone, we're not like demanding people. We're not saying, I need this fight, I need that fight. I think it was just the path, the steps on the path we weren't aligned on. That was all. So Lerrone will fight anyone. You saw with Gongora, most avoided guy in the division. Lerrone will fight him. It was never... Lerrone Richards doesn't swerve anyone. It was the more overall feel of where he was heading. And as I said, massive respect to Matchroom and what they did for Lerrone. It's just not quite right. It's one of those relationships where both parties felt, do you know what, probably best to move on.
Where does Lerrone go from here then, Adam? Obviously, he's worked with Frank, he's worked with Eddie, the main UK broadcaster and networks, obviously Sky and Boxer. Other than that, you're looking at the States. What is the plan with him?
I think we're talking to different promoters. We're understanding what plans they have for Lerrone, because that's really important. Lerrone just doesn't want to just do one-off fights. Want to understand the plans. We're talking to all sorts of different promoters. Don't want to name them now, but both in the UK and outside the UK, and seeing what they've got in store for Lerrone, because I think he's a tremendously talented fighter, one of Britain's best, that should go on and get world honours.
He's spoken to me off camera about kind of his frustrations of not being able to get a fight on the back of a Gongora win, and really building on that. Whenever he next fights, how hopeful are you that he's at least, say, a top 10 opponent within the division?
It's challenging, isn't it? Because if you start with a new promoter, maybe that won't be the first fight. Maybe, I'm not saying you will, but maybe you have to take one step sideways or backwards to take two steps forwards. So will his next fight be against a top 10 opponent? Maybe, maybe not. We're very focused on the long term for Lerrone. That's what's important.
All right, Adam, I think that about wraps it up, and you've got other stuff to go through. Go for it.
Junaid Bostan tomorrow night. Keep your eye out for him.
Are you working with Junaid? I didn't actually know you as Junaid had signed with you.
Junaid signed with us. It's his first fight under us tomorrow. He's on early, on before the bell, but he's not signed with Matchroom. They've been very kind to give him an outing, and I'm really excited about him.
Of course, firstly, apologies to Junaid, because I had no idea that he'd signed with SJAM. But we can obviously touch on him as well. I've heard very good things about him out of the gym up here, the Steel City gym. How excited are you about his journey?
Really excited. I mean, I saw some great content yesterday on one of your competitor channels of Junaid at 12 years old getting interviewed by Jordan Gill, and then Jordan interviewed him again yesterday. Listen, he's a great talker, but also he's got a phenomenal mindset. He's a brilliant talker out the ring, but it's just business for him tomorrow. And a lot of time with prospects, not so much with our prospects, but they're very careful on who they want to be matched against. Oh, that guy looks a bit dangerous, or I don't like that. Junaid's like, yeah, just put him in there, I'll fight anyone. So I think really exciting guy.
Well, we're all looking forward to following his journey now. And Adam, I will leave you to go and catch up with the team. Thank you for speaking to me in ID Boxing.
Thanks, Andy.